sanitation in the country. The forum, as we hear in this report by Rohi Bitey, is also meant to launch the National Water Sanitation Working Group.
Designed to improve the coordination of activities of the various actors in the provision of water, has been seen as a basic human requirement for healthy living. The cardinal principle of this working group is to align efforts and standards through information sharing. According to the Minister of Fisheries and Water Resources, Mas Aksige, the project will ensure effective coordination and collaboration in the delivery of water and sanitation services.
You will all agree with me that water and sanitation are basic human requirements for healthy existence. This is why the government of the Gambia continues to render all possible support to the provision of these basic services.
This new integrated approach by Water Resources is expected to be addressed through data collection, monitoring and advocacy. The end product is to provide government with relevant information for effective planning of water and sanitation issues.
The WSWG is designed to improve coordination of the activities of the various actors in the provisions of both water for human consumption or other users and sanitation activities properly.
Among the project's expected gain will be the collaboration of actors in water and sanitation in their quest for safe drinking water and basic sanitation. Forums like these are expected to be held twice a year, which relevant stakeholders in the business of water and sanitation will present their achievements and work plans. Rahibite, Grts.
Time now to take our first break. When we come back, we take a look at news from outside the Gambia. Stay tuned. Welcome back. As the international community continues weighing its response to a deadly chemical weapons attack, the United Nations has revealed that more than 5 million Syrians are now refugees seeking safety in neighboring countries. And Lebanon has taken in most of the refugees running away from the raging conflict in their country. CNN's Our Damon shares the plight of these refugees.
Yam is not this 25-year-old's real name. She is terrified. When she first arrived here in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley from Syria, she went to a small local group that was distributing food. They called me back in the evening saying, "We have a distribution at 7 p.m., she recalls. She says she got there with a friend of hers. Two men then said they had to drive to the warehouse. They attacked us. We started to scream and cry, she remembers, speaking softly. She says the men tried to rape them, but they fought back. They said, "Why are you scared? Nothing happened. You are married. Why are you afraid of this? It's not your first time." There was no one she could turn to, not even her family. They will say, "Why did you go there?" And they aren't going to listen. Either they will kill me or they will send me to my parents and they will kill me. We are a tribal society. And so the mother of three suffers in silence. The stigma prevents many of the victims of sexual abuse from seeking help, and there is no way to know how widespread such abuses are. But as the Syrian refugee population grows, so too does the landscape for all forms of exploitation. Rahaf is just 14. Her mother says she sent her to clean houses to make much-needed extra money. One day, 3 teens tried to corner her. She ran home crying. They scared me. They made me hate life, she remembers. Her mother adds, she said, "Mama, I would rather die in our country than have these problems." At least 2 million Syrians are now refugees in neighboring countries, and that's just the registered number. In reality, aid groups say it's much, much higher. Host countries simply cannot adequately handle the influx. And even organizations like UNHCR say they have less than 50% of the funds required to meet basic refugee needs. The global community has failed to unite and end the war in Syria. But there's no justification to failing to provide funding for refugees or for protecting the most vulnerable among them. Arwa Damon, CNN, Beirut.
Israel has said that it has launched an experimental missile in the Mediterranean Sea. Russia's early warning system was the first to detect what it calls ballistic objects in the area. U.S. military officials say no American forces were involved in the test. As Brianna Keller explains, all this happened as the Obama administration tries to gain support from members of Congress.
Feels pretty positively following a meeting yesterday with two key Republicans, Senator John McCain, who of course President Obama defeated in 2008, and Senator Lindsey Graham. They are two of the more prominent hawks in Congress. They certainly would like to see more done in terms of aid to the rebels and perhaps military retaliation than, say, the Obama administration would like to see. But the hope here from the White House is that they can find a sweet spot and work out the language of what that resolution authorizing force would be. At this point, though, Christy, still very important to emphasize, and that's why you're seeing so much outreach from the White House. I think there's still a sense that they're not quite there yet. They have a lot of convincing to do, but I think they're feeling here at the White House, talking to officials, I think they're feeling a little better about their prospects for getting something through Congress.
Okay, so they have a lot more convincing to do. Why? Why the hesitation? What are you hearing?
Well, there's a couple of things, and I think it's what Americans are concerned about as well as members of Congress, and that is, how ironclad is the intelligence. Americans, Congress, they've been burned before. Iraq looms very large in their memory, and there are a number of concerns even from members of Congress who might actually go along with a resolution that would authorize force. They certainly want to be sure that there's no room for there to be boots on the ground, and they want to make sure that this is a limited engagement. They want to make sure that there's an end point so that it's not something that drags on and on. And for instance, for McCain and Graham on their part, they want to make sure that there's more assistance to the rebels. As you've heard, Christy, there's a lot of concern. Well, how do you know exactly who the rebels are? What if you give them weaponry and it falls into the wrong hands? McCain certainly feels that that is a risk worth taking, and that the U.S. actually does have the resources to be sure that you pinpoint the rebels who will be friendly to the U.S.
The Obama administration, they've been out there trying to rally up support. I understand the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and the Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel, they will both testify to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Tuesday. What should we expect to hear?
Yeah, this is going to be a big hearing today, and I think what we're expecting to hear is them making the case. The headline of the case that the administration is making is, if Congress does not authorize the use of force, if a message isn't sent by the U.S., then it says not just to the Assad regime, but it says to Iran and it says to Hezbollah, go ahead, try us, on some of these policies that we have. We might just let you get away with it. And that's really, I think, what you see the administration really pushing. Now, there have also been a number of classified briefings that explain the intelligence the U.S. government has to support the fact that chemical weapons have been used and that it's the Assad regime using them. I think there is a lot of skepticism over that. I don't know if we're going to get maybe to the very heart of that just because of the classified nature of some of that, Christy.
Japanese Prime Minister has announced that his government will spend close to $500 million to tackle the toxic water crisis at the crippled Fukushima power plant. About $320 million will be spent on freezing the ground around the reactors. As Paula Hancock explains, the move is expected to be a short-term solution.
More workers, and they're hoping this is going to allay the fears that the domestic audience has. But of course, this is also for an international audience. The Japanese Prime Minister is very well aware that people around the world are watching the constant mishaps and the constant drip feed of bad news from the Fukushima nuclear power plant very closely indeed. And of course, when this highly toxic water is seeping into the Pacific Ocean, going into international waters and affecting other countries, he understands that something needs to be done. But of course, what many people in Japan and around the world are asking is, why did it take so long for the Japanese government to get involved?